The Coalition staging ground hung in space like a gathering of metal giants. Captain Hansel stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching the alien vessels arrive through the viewports. Each one was a masterpiece. The Thesian warships were sleek and elegant, all curves and flowing lines, their hulls shimmering with energy shields. The Valoran cruisers were massive and blocky, covered in heavy armor plating and bristling with plasma cannons. The Drexian carriers looked like floating cities, their launch bays capable of deploying thousands of fighter craft. "Beautiful," his first officer whispered. "Every one of them is a work of art." Hansel nodded. The alien ships represented the best technology in the galaxy. Fast, powerful, modern. He looked down at his own console, at the readouts showing the human fleet approaching from slipspace. His fleet was none of those things. "All ships prepare for emergence," he announced. "Let us introduce ourselves." The first wave of human ships dropped out of slipspace. 20 missile cruisers from the year 2489. Their hulls were gray and angular, designed purely for function. Chemical rocket engines, basic fusion reactors, no fancy energy shields, just armor plating and missile tubes. Lots of missile tubes. The Coalition communication channels immediately lit up with chatter. "What are those?" a Valoran commander asked. "Those are human vessels," a Thesian officer replied. "Though I have never seen designs like that." Hansel smiled. They had not seen designs like that because these ships were nearly 400 years old. He opened a channel to the Coalition command ship. "This is Captain Hansel of the Earth Defense Force, first wave deployed." "First wave?" Counselor Vexitar's voice came through, sounding confused. "How many ships are you sending?" "All of them," Hansel replied. The second wave emerged. 50 railgun destroyers from 2531, then 100 torpedo frigates from 2598, then carrier groups from 2462, then battle cruisers from 2519, then more, and more, and more. Wave after wave of human ships dropped out of slipspace. The Coalition forces watched in growing shock as the human fleet kept expanding. 100 ships, 500, 1,000, 2,000. The alien vessels, so impressive moments before, were slowly being outnumbered and surrounded by a sea of human warships. Hansel watched his tactical display. Each new wave added another cluster of dots to the screen. Ancient carriers with their fighter bays open. Old destroyers with their railguns charged. Missile cruisers that looked like they belonged in a museum. And modern frigates that looked almost new but were still considered outdated by Earth standards. "How many ships is that?" someone asked on the open channel. "Still counting," another voice replied. 4,000 ships, 5,000, 6,000. The human fleet kept growing, and with each new arrival, the Coalition's confusion grew. Observer Kalthos was a Valoran intelligence officer assigned to document the Coalition's military capabilities. He floated in his observation pod, his multiple eyes recording everything. He had seen many fleets in his career. He had never seen anything like this. The human ships were wrong. That was the only word for it. They did not match. Some were tiny patrol craft barely 50 meters long. Others were massive carriers stretching 2 kilometers. Some had sleek hulls that suggested speed. Others were brick-shaped blocks of armor and weapons. Some had modern slipspace drives. Others had old fusion engines that glowed with barely contained energy. "This is not a fleet," he muttered to himself. "This is a scrapyard." But his analytical mind was already working. He pulled up detailed scans of the human vessels and started categorizing them. What he found made no sense. These ships spanned centuries of technological development. The oldest designs dated back nearly 400 years. In Valoran terms, that was ancient history. No military kept ships that old. They were inefficient, outdated, vulnerable. And yet, as he studied the data, he noticed something. The ships were not just old, they were maintained. Their hulls showed signs of recent repairs. Their reactors were operating at peak efficiency. Their weapons systems were active and ready. These were not mothballed relics pulled out of storage at the last minute. These were functional warships that had been kept in perfect condition. "Why?" he whispered. On the Coalition command ship, Counselor Vexitar was not whispering. He was shouting, "This is an insult," he roared at the communication screen. Ambassador Jiwoo's face remained calm on the display. "We asked for your most advanced warships and you send us antiques? Those ships still use chemical rockets. I can see the exhaust trails from here. Some of them have ballistic missiles." "Ballistic missiles? What century are you living in?" The question, Jiwoo replied coolly, is what century are you fighting in? You asked for our contribution. This is our contribution, 8,417 vessels, ready for combat. They will be destroyed in the first engagement, Aquilian commander interjected. The Void Swarm will tear through those ancient hulls like they are made of paper. You are sending your people to die. We are sending our people to fight, Jiwoo corrected. There is a difference, Vextar shook his head. His skin had turned dark blue with frustration. I appreciate Earth's willingness to help, but this is a modern war. We need modern weapons. These ships, they belong in museums. Then it is a good thing we kept our museums, Jiwoo said. Captain Hansol, proceed with the battle plan. The communication ended. Vextar stared at the blank screen, then turned to his tactical officers. What is their deployment pattern? They are requesting the vanguard position, sir, a young officer reported nervously. The bridge went silent. The vanguard position was at the front of the fleet. It was where the first contact with the enemy would occur. It was also where the highest casualties were expected. It was essentially a suicide position. They want to be in front? Vextar asked slowly. Yes, sir. Captain Hansol was very clear. The human fleet will form the first line of defense. They are requesting that coalition forces hold back until the initial engagement is complete. They are going to get slaughtered, a Drexian commander said. This is madness. It is their choice, Vextar said quietly. He felt a strange mixture of emotions. Respect for their courage, pity for their foolishness, and a growing unease that he could not quite explain. Grant their request. Let the humans have the vanguard. Position our forces in the second wave. We will recover what we can after the battle. Aboard the ancient carrier Incheon's Pride, Captain Dong-hyun listened to the coalition chatter with amusement. His ship was 403 years old. It had fought in the Resource Wars, survived the Mars Rebellion, and served in a dozen smaller conflicts before being retired to reserve status. Its hull was scarred and patched. Its reactor hummed with a sound that younger engineers found disturbing. Its fighter bays used mechanical launch systems instead of gravity catapults, and he loved every inch of it. Sir, the coalition thinks we are going to die, his tactical officer said. They are probably right, Dong-hyun replied. This ship was built to fight and die. It just took 4 centuries to find the right battle. I think that is pretty good service, his crew laughed. They were old too. Not in years, but in spirit. Most of them had served on reserve vessels their entire careers. They had maintained these ancient ships, run drills in them, trained for a war that everyone said would never come. And now it was here. All fighters prepare for launch, Dong-hyun ordered. When the swarm arrives, we show them what old technology can do. Observer Kalthos continued his analysis. He was starting to see patterns. The human fleet was not random. It was organized by function. The ancient missile cruisers were positioned for long-range bombardment. The railgun destroyers formed a screen. The carriers stayed behind, ready to deploy their fighters. The torpedo frigates were clustered in strike groups. Each era of ship had a specific role. Each role complemented the others. The old ships provided capabilities the new ships lacked. The new ships covered weaknesses in the old ships. It was not a modern fleet. It was something else. Something he had only read about in historical texts, a combined arms force. They are not sending antiques, he said suddenly. They are sending a complete military doctrine. Multiple eras, multiple technologies, multiple approaches, all working together. He opened a priority channel to the coalition command. Counselor Vextar, I need to speak with you immediately. I think we have misunderstood the human strategy. But before Vextar could respond, alarms started blaring across every ship in the fleet. The Void Swarm had arrived. Hansol watched the sensor displays light up. The swarm came out of dark space like a nightmare. Thousands of organic ships, each one pulsing with biomechanical energy. They moved in perfect coordination. A single hive mind controlling countless vessels. They had destroyed entire civilizations. They had adapted to every weapon the galaxy possessed. They were death itself. All ships, Hansol said calmly. This is it. Remember your training. Remember why we kept these ships. Remember that obsolete does not mean useless. Today we teach the galaxy what humanity learned a long time ago. Diversity is strength. All vessels weapons free. Show them what 3 centuries of human warfare looks like. The ancient fleet surged forward. Missile cruisers from the 25th century opened fire alongside torpedo frigates from the 26th. The Void Swarm hit the coalition lines like a tidal wave of death. 50,000 biomechanical ships all moving with perfect coordination. The Thesian vessels fired first, their plasma lances cutting brilliant lines across the darkness. Direct hits. Swarm ships exploded in bursts of organic matter and twisted metal. For 30 seconds it looked like victory. Then the swarm adapted. Their hulls shifted, becoming reflective. The plasma bolts splashed harmlessly against the new surface. The Thesian weapons, so devastating moments before, suddenly became useless. The swarm surged forward. All Thesian vessels switched to quantum torpedoes. Counselor Vextar shouted. The torpedoes launched. More swarm ships died. Then their shields changed frequency and the torpedoes began detonating prematurely. The swarm was learning, always learning. This is what happened at Redmark, Vextar whispered. They adapt faster than we can switch weapons. The Valoran cruisers opened fire with their gravity cannons. The weapons created distortions in space-time, crushing swarm vessels like tin cans. Effective. For a moment, then the swarm ships began reinforcing their structures, spreading their mass differently. The gravity weapons lost effectiveness. Within 10 minutes, the coalition forces were taking heavy casualties. Thesian warships exploded. Valoran cruisers were torn apart. Drexian carriers burned. Admiral, Captain Hansol said quietly into his private channel to Admiral Una. The coalition is being destroyed. I can see that, Una replied. She was watching from Earth, monitoring every sensor feed. Execute Phase 1, all ancient vessels full barrage. Hansol took a deep breath. All missile cruisers, you are cleared to engage. Fire everything. 2,000 ancient warships built between 2450 and 2550 opened their launch tubes. Chemical missiles. Thousands of them, simple rockets with explosive warheads, technology that was old when humanity first reached Mars. The kind of weapons that modern species considered laughable. The swarm ignored them. Their sensors detected no energy signatures, no exotic particles, nothing that registered as a threat. They were just metal tubes flying through space. Then they hit. The explosions were not elegant plasma bursts or quantum detonations. They were crude chemical reactions, fire and force, but they were devastating. The swarm shields designed to counter energy weapons offered no protection. Their adaptive armor, optimized against modern threats, was blown apart by simple explosives. Hundreds of swarm ships vanished in fireballs. What just happened? Vextar stared at his displays in shock. Observer Kalthos was analyzing the data frantically. The swarm adapted to energy weapons and exotic particles, but those missiles are using basic chemistry. Combustion reactions. There is nothing exotic to adapt to. It is just fuel and fire. The swarm tried to adapt. Their hulls thickened. Their armor became denser. It helped, but not enough. The missiles kept coming, wave after wave. The ancient human cruisers had been built for sustained bombardment. Their magazines were enormous. Phase 2, Admiral Una ordered. Railgun screen engage. Captain Hyjin was commanding a destroyer squadron from 2531. Her ships looked crude compared to modern vessels, but their weapons were simple and brutal. Magnetic accelerators fired solid metal slugs at hypersonic velocity. All ships fire at will, she commanded. The railguns opened up. The sound traveled through the ship's hulls, a distinctive thrumming that every human sailor knew. Metal slugs, each one weighing several tons, crossed the distance in seconds. No energy signature. No complex particles. Just mass and velocity. The swarm's thickened armor helped against the missiles. It did nothing against the railguns. The slugs punched through like the armor was paper. Swarm ships were torn apart, their organic components spilling into the void. The swarm tried to adapt again. They began moving evasively, trying to dodge. But there were too many projectiles. The human destroyers fired in coordinated volleys, creating kill zones that were impossible to avoid. They are using primitive weapons, a Quillian officer said in amazement. And it is working. They are using diverse weapons, Kalthos corrected. The swarm can adapt to any single threat, but they are facing multiple threats based on completely different principles. Chemical explosives. Kinetic energy. Each one requires a different adaptation, and while they are adapting to one, the other is killing them. The swarm changed tactics. They stopped trying to adapt and simply charged forward. If they could not counter the weapons, They would close to melee range and overwhelm through numbers. Swarm fighters poured out of the larger vessels. Thousands of them. Small, fast, deadly. Phase 3, Yuna said. Release the fighters. Captain Donghyun smiled. His 400-year-old carrier had been waiting for this. Launch all craft. Show these youngsters how we used to fight. The Incheon's Pride's launch bays opened. Mechanical catapults, ancient technology that used springs and electromagnets, threw fighter after fighter into space. They were not sleek modern craft with AI pilots. They were old human-piloted fighters, built when automation was still distrusted, and they were not alone. Every human carrier in the fleet was launching. Modern drone fighters, semi-autonomous interceptors, old piloted craft, even ancient atmospheric fighters that had been retrofitted for space combat. Thousands upon thousands of small craft. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. Modern warfare used a few hundred elite fighters with advanced AI. Humanity was throwing waves of craft piloted by humans, controlled by simple computers or running on AI that was 3 generations out of date. It should not have worked, but it did. The swarm fighters were designed to face predictable enemies. They used swarm intelligence to coordinate attacks. But the human fighters were not predictable. The AI-controlled ones followed different programming. The human pilots made decisions based on training and instinct. The semi-autonomous craft operated on yet another logic. There was no pattern to exploit, and there were so many of them. This is insane, Lieutenant Bora said from the operations center on Earth. She was watching the tactical displays in disbelief. We are fighting a space battle with fighters that are older than my grandparents. And it is working, Commander Tae-Yang replied. Because the swarm adapted to face modern warfare. They never expected to face historical warfare. They prepared for the best technology. We are hitting them with every technology. The battle descended into chaos. Human missiles from 3 different centuries exploded across the battlefield. Railguns from 5 different design generations fired continuously. Fighters engaged in swirling dogfights. And through it all, the swarm kept trying to adapt, but could not keep up with the sheer variety of threats. Phase 4, Admiral Yuna ordered. Torpedo strike. Commander Jae-hee, you are cleared for attack. Jae-hee commanded a squadron of torpedo frigates. Her ships were fast and fragile, built for hit-and-run attacks. But her torpedoes were special. Fusion warheads from the 2590s. Old technology compared to modern quantum weapons, but based on completely different physics. All ships, attack formation, target the command vessels, fire on my mark. The frigates darted through the battle, dodging plasma bolts and bioweapons. The swarm was so busy adapting to missiles and railguns that they did not notice the torpedo attack until it was too late. Fire. Fusion torpedoes streaked across space. They were slower than modern weapons. The swarm's point defenses had time to target them. But they were targeting the wrong way. Modern defenses used energy fields and particle beams. The torpedoes were heavily armored against exactly those defenses, designed in an era when those were the only point defenses available. The torpedoes penetrated the defensive screen and struck home. Fusion explosions blossomed. Swarm command vessels, huge biomechanical structures that coordinated hundreds of smaller ships, were vaporized. The swarm fleet began showing signs of confusion. Without the command ships, the hive coordination degraded. They were still dangerous, but no longer perfectly synchronized. It is working, Vextar said quietly. By the stars, it is actually working. Observer Kalthos was recording everything. This will change warfare forever, he whispered. They are not using the best weapons. They are using all the weapons. Every era, every technology, every approach. The swarm cannot adapt because there is nothing to adapt to. Each attack uses different principles. The battle raged for 3 more hours. The human fleet took terrible losses. Ancient missile cruisers were torn apart. Railgun destroyers exploded. Carrier groups burned. But for every human ship destroyed, dozens of swarm vessels died. And the humans kept coming. When one wave was exhausted, another moved forward. There were so many ships, so many different weapons, so many different approaches. The swarm began to retreat. For the first time since they had entered the galaxy, they were losing, not because they faced superior technology, but because they faced comprehensive technology. Then the sensors detected something new. A massive swarm vessel emerged from dark space. It was 10 times larger than anything seen before. Biomechanical armor covered its surface. Energy weapons bristled across its hull. It pulsed with power. The Queen ship, Han Sol breathed. They brought a queen ship. The massive vessel began destroying human ships with contemptuous ease. Its weapons were devastating. Its armor adapted to every attack within seconds. It was everything the swarm was, concentrated in one overwhelming platform. Commander Taeyang had not slept in 36 hours. His eyes were red and his uniform was wrinkled, but he could not stop smiling. Around him, the Reserve Fleet Operations Center buzzed with activity. Hundreds of officers and engineers worked at their stations, screens glowing with data streams and status reports. This was the day he had trained for his entire career, the day the museums came alive. "Status report on Sector 7 vaults," he called out. Lieutenant Bora looked up from her console. She was young, fresh out of the academy, and she looked completely overwhelmed. "Sir, I am reading active power signatures from 243 vessels. The oldest ones are taking longer to warm up. The fusion reactors from 2547 need manual ignition sequences." "That is fine," Taeyang said. "We have time." "What about the Mars platforms?" "Online and operational," another officer reported. 412 ships ready for deployment. Captain Hyojin is overseeing final checks personally. Taeyang nodded and pulled up the master display. The holographic star map of the Sol system filled the center of the room. Red dots marked every reserve vault location. As he watched, the dots were turning green one by one. Each green dot represented dozens or hundreds of warships coming back to life after years, decades, sometimes centuries of hibernation. Europa Station, green 7. 100 ships, Titan Yards, green 9. 100 ships, the Outer Belt. Facilities, green 1,000 ships. He felt a presence behind him and turned. Admiral Yuna had entered the operations center. Everyone stood at attention, but she waved them back to work. "As you were. We do not have time for ceremony." She walked to the master display and studied it. Her face showed no emotion, but Taeyang had served under her long enough to recognize the slight tension in her shoulders. She was worried. Good. That meant she understood what they were about to attempt. "How many are operational?" she asked. 6,800 so far, Taeyang replied. "Another 1,000 will be ready within 48 hours. The rest need more extensive work, but they will be ready before the deadline." "Show me the breakdown by era," Yuna commanded. Taeyang manipulated the controls. The display reorganized, sorting the ships into categories based on their construction date. 24th century vessels. The ancient ones. Chemical rockets and early fusion drives. Railguns and ballistic missiles. 2,000 ships. Most people would call them antiques. Taeyang called them Plan A 25th century vessels. The middle generation. Improved fusion drives, early plasma weapons, magnetic shielding. 3,000 ships, outdated by modern standards. Still perfectly functional. 26th century vessels. Recent retirees. Advanced fusion torpedoes, kinetic barriers, modern sensors with old processors. 3,000 ships. These had been retired not because they were broken, but because newer models had replaced them. "The galaxy is going to think we are insane," Lieutenant Bora said quietly. Yuna glanced at her. "What is your assessment, Lieutenant?" Bora swallowed nervously. She was not used to being addressed directly by the Admiral. "Sir, with respect, these ships are outdated. The Thesians have plasma lances that can cut through our strongest armor. The Velerans have gravity drives that make our fastest ships look slow. The Drexians have shields that can absorb nuclear explosions. We are bringing ships that use bullets and missiles." "That is correct," Yuna said. "Continue your analysis." "I just do not understand the strategy," Bora admitted. "How can old weapons fight a threat that destroys modern fleets?" Dr. Sang-woo entered the operations center at that moment. The military historian was carrying a thick datapad and looked excited. "I can answer that question," he said. "May I use the display?" Yuna gestured for him to proceed. Sang-woo activated his datapad and the master display changed. Now it showed a tactical simulation. 2 fleets facing each other. One fleet was small in uniform. Advanced ships, all the same design. The other fleet was huge and chaotic. Ships of every size and design, no uniformity at all. "This is the problem with modern warfare," Sang-woo began. "Every species pursues the newest technology. They build the best ships they can, then scrap the old ones. This creates fleets that are powerful but predictable. All the ships use the same weapons, the same tactics, the same technology." He ran the simulation. The uniform fleet attacked. Its weapons were devastating. Then the enemy adapted. Shields changed frequency. Armor adjusted density. Within minutes, the weapons became less effective. The uniform fleet lost. Now watch this, Sang-Woo said. He reset the simulation, but this time the chaotic fleet attacked. Missiles launched. Railguns fired. Plasma weapons blazed. Lasers cut through space. Kinetic rams charged forward. The enemy tried to adapt, but every time it countered one weapon type, another different attack hit it. The adaptation process could not keep up. The chaotic fleet won. The Void Swarm can adapt to any weapon, Sang-Woo explained. But it takes time. If you fire plasma at them, they develop plasma-resistant armor within minutes. If you fire kinetic weapons, they thicken their hulls. But what if you fire both? What if you fire 10 different weapon types? What if you attack with technology from 3 different centuries, each with different principles and different approaches? Bora stared at the display. Understanding dawned on her face. They cannot adapt to everything at once. Exactly, Sang-Woo said. Our ancient missile cruisers use chemical explosives. No energy signature. No exotic particles, just basic chemistry and physics. The swarm's shields are designed for energy weapons. They will not stop a missile that is essentially a flying bomb. Our railguns fire solid metal at hypersonic speeds. No plasma, no lasers, just mass and velocity. Our torpedo frigates use fusion warheads that create explosions in a completely different way than modern quantum weapons. We are not bringing obsolete weapons, Tae-Yang said. We are bringing comprehensive weapons. Yuna smiled. Commander Tae-Yang understands. Every species in the galaxy upgraded their fleets and threw away the old. They thought they were becoming stronger. Actually, they were becoming more vulnerable. Humanity kept everything. We never threw away a weapon system. We never forgot a tactic. We kept building new ships, but we also kept all the old ones, not as museums, as options. She turned to face the entire operations center. Officers and engineers stopped their work to listen. 300 years ago, humanity almost destroyed itself in the resource wars, Yuna said. We learned hard lessons. One lesson was this: waste nothing. Another lesson was this: diversity is strength. We kept our old ships not because we are sentimental. We kept them because we understood that every weapon, every tool, every approach has value against the right enemy. The galaxy laughed at us. They called our reserve fleets scrapyards. They called our tactics primitive. Let them laugh. In 12 days they will understand. The room was silent. Then someone started clapping. Others joined. Soon the entire operations center was applauding. Bora had tears in her eyes. Tae-Yang felt his chest swell with pride. All right, enough celebration, Yuna said, but she was smiling. We have work to do. Captain Hai-Jin, report status. A screen flickered to life, showing a woman in a pressure suit. Behind her, massive shapes loomed in the darkness of space. Old warships, their hulls scarred and ancient, but their engines glowing with renewed power. Admiral, this is Hai-Jin. I am at the Titan yards. The old destroyer squadron is ready for deployment. I have to say, these ships are beautiful. They have been waiting 300 years for this moment. They deserve their last battle. These ships are not going to their last battle, Yuna corrected. They are going to save the galaxy. There is a difference. Prepare for departure. All reserve vessels will rendezvous at the outer marker in 6 days, then proceed to the coalition staging ground. Understood, Admiral. Hai-Jin out. Tae-Yang looked at the master display again. Almost all the dots were green now. 8,000 ships. 3 centuries of human warfare. Every lesson learned, every weapon developed, every tactical doctrine preserved. Other species saw progress as replacing the old with the new. Humanity saw progress as adding the new to the old. Lieutenant Bora, Yuna said, you asked about strategy. Here is the strategy. Overwhelming force through technological diversity. The swarm can adapt, but adaptation takes time. We will hit them with so many different weapons from so many different eras, using so many different principles, that they will not have time to adapt to all of them. And while they are trying to figure out how to counter chemical missiles from the 24th century, our 26th century fusion torpedoes will be tearing them apart. And if that does not work? Bora asked quietly. Yuna's expression became hard. Then we have 8,000 ships willing to ram them. Kinetic energy is kinetic energy, Lieutenant. It does not matter if the ship is 5 years old or 500 years old. At sufficient velocity, mass equals devastation. We will stop the swarm, one way or another. Outside the operations center, across the Sol system, the ancient warships continued to wake up. Reactor cores that had been cold for centuries burned hot again. Weapons systems that had been inactive for generations ran through their firing sequences. Crew members who had trained their whole careers for a war that might never come were finally called to serve. The emergency lights flashed red across every screen in the Galactic Council chamber. Ambassador Jiwoo stood perfectly still as the massive holographic display showed system after system going dark. Red marks spread across the star map like a disease. The Void Swarm had arrived and they were hungry. Counselor Vextar slammed his three-fingered hand against the podium. The Thesian leader looked exhausted. His blue skin had turned pale, and his normally proud stance had collapsed into something that looked like defeat. "The Helion sector has fallen," he announced. 17 colonies gone, 4 billion souls consumed. Jiwoo felt her stomach twist. She had visited Helion Prime once 3 years ago. Beautiful crystal cities under purple skies. Children playing in parks. Now it was all just empty space and debris. The Quillian Defense Force engaged the swarm at Redmark Station, Vextar continued. His voice shook. 200 warships. State-of-the-art vessels. The battle lasted 11 minutes. 11 minutes. The swarm adapted to every weapon we fired. Plasma lances, gravity bombs, quantum missiles. Nothing worked for long. They learn. They evolve. They consume. The chamber fell silent. Jiwoo looked around at the other ambassadors. The Valorans were whispering among themselves. The Quillians stared at the floor. Even the usually confident Drexians seemed shaken. This was bad. Really bad. "We need every ship," Vextar said. "Every weapon. Every species must contribute their most advanced warships to the Coalition Defense Fleet. This is not a request. This is survival." Jiwoo stepped forward. Her shoes clicked on the polished floor. "Earth will answer the call," she said clearly. "We will send our contribution within 2 weeks." Vexitar nodded, but his expression was not grateful. It was almost pitying. "Ambassador, with respect, humanity has been part of this council for only 50 years. Your technology is functional, but behind the curve. We appreciate any help, but please understand the situation requires cutting-edge vessels." A Quillian ambassador spoke up. His voice was high and sharp. "The human ships still use kinetic weapons, bullets and missiles, chemical propulsion in some cases. These are ancient technologies. The swarm will tear through them like paper." Jiwoo kept her face neutral, but inside she was angry. Yes, human ships were not as fast as Thesian cruisers. Yes, human weapons did not have the raw power of Valoran plasma lances. But humanity had survived its own world wars, its own apocalypses, its own extinction events. They knew something about fighting. "We will send what we can send," Jiwoo replied calmly. "Earth does not abandon its allies." Vextar waved his hand dismissively. "Very well. 2 weeks. Bring whatever vessels you can spare. Every ship counts, even outdated ones. This meeting is adjourned. May the stars have mercy on us all." The holographic displays faded. The ambassadors began filing out, their conversations hushed and worried. Jiwoo walked back to her quarters alone. The station's corridors felt colder than usual. Through the windows, she could see the distant stars. Some of those stars used to have colonies. Now they had nothing. She reached her private communication room and activated the quantum link to Earth. The connection took a few seconds. Then Admiral Yuna's face appeared on the screen. The Admiral looked tired but alert. Her gray hair was tied back in a tight bun, and her dark eyes studied Jiwoo carefully. "I heard the broadcast," Yuna said. "The swarm?" "Worse than the report suggested," Jiwoo replied. "They are not just attacking. They are adapting. Every weapon we use, they learn to counter. The Thesians lost their entire armada in a single engagement. The Council is calling for all advanced warships." Yuna was quiet for a moment. Then incredibly she smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting for something. "Advanced warships," Yuna repeated. "They want our best and newest vessels." "That's what they said," Jiwoo confirmed. "Vextar made it clear he thinks our technology is primitive. The other species agree. They are accepting our help out of desperation, not respect." "Good," Yuna said. "Let them think that," Jiwoo frowned. "Admiral, what are you planning?" Yuna leaned back in her chair. Behind her, Jiwoo could see the wall of her office. It was covered in old photographs. Ancient warships from Earth's history, sailing vessels from the age of wood and canvas, steel battleships from the world wars, early space cruisers from the colonization era. Yuna kept them there as reminders. "Do you know why I keep those pictures?" Yuna asked. To remember history, Jiwoo said. To remember that nothing is ever wasted, Yuna corrected. Every ship humanity ever built taught us something. Every weapon, every tactic, every mistake and victory. We kept those lessons. And we kept more than lessons. Jiwoo felt a chill run down her spine. What do you mean? I am issuing orders to open the reserve vaults, Yuna said. All of them. Sol system, Mars orbital platforms, the Titan yards, Europa station, and the outer belt facilities. I want every vessel operational within 10 days. The reserve vaults? Jiwoo was confused. Those are just museums and scrapyards. Decommissioned ships. They have been sitting in storage for decades, some for centuries. Yuna's smile grew wider. That is what everyone thinks. That is what we wanted everyone to think. But humanity learned a long time ago never to throw away a weapon. We do not scrap our warships, Ambassador. We preserve them. We maintain them. We keep them ready. Ready for what? For this, Yuna said simply. For the day when being advanced is not enough. For the day when diversity matters more than superiority. The galaxy thinks we are bringing our best ships. They are wrong. We are bringing all our ships. Jiwoo stared at the Admiral. How many ships are we talking about? 8,417 vessels, Yuna replied, spanning 3 centuries of military development. From early fusion drives to modern slipspace engines, from chemical missiles to quantum torpedoes, every generation of human warfare preserved and ready to fight. That is impossible, Jiwoo whispered. The logistics alone would be... We have been preparing for 300 years, Yuna interrupted. Every retired ship went into reserve status. Full maintenance, full crews on rotation, full ammunition stocks. The galaxy laughed at our museums. They should have been afraid of our memory. The Admiral stood up. Tell the Council we will meet them at the staging ground in 12 days. Tell them humanity is bringing its contribution. And, Ambassador, do not tell them what is coming. Let it be a surprise. The transmission ended. Jiwoo sat in the dark room for a long time, staring at the blank screen. 8,000 ships, 3 centuries of weapons. She thought about Vextar's dismissive tone, the Quillians' mocking words. They thought human technology was primitive. They were about to learn that primitive did not mean powerless. And obsolete did not mean useless. Outside the window, the stars continued to shine. Some were already dead, their light just now reaching across the void. But some were very much alive. And around one of those stars, an ancient and stubborn species was waking up its ghosts. The Void Swarm had made a terrible mistake. They had threatened humanity, and humanity never forgot how to fight. The Queenship was a monster. Captain Dong-hyun watched it on his displays and understood that his 400-year-old carrier had no chance against it. The massive swarm vessel fired weapons that tore through space itself. Its armor adapted in real time to every attack. Its shields absorbed energy that would have destroyed planets. This was what Apex evolution looked like. All fighters recall to base, he ordered. Then he paused. His carrier was barely functional. Half the systems were damaged. The hull was breached in a dozen places. His crew was exhausted. They had fought for hours. They had earned their rest, but rest was not why humanity kept these old ships. Cancel that order, Dong-hyun said. Helm, set a collision course. Full speed. His bridge crew stared at him. His first officer opened his mouth to protest, then closed it. They all understood. They had always understood. These ships were built to fight and die. The only question was whether their death would matter. Collision course set, the helmsman reported quietly. Impact in 90 seconds. All hands, this is the captain, Dong-hyun said over the ship-wide channel. We have been given an honor. Our ship, the Inchen's Pride, built 403 years ago, has been chosen to strike the first blow against the Queenship. I know this ship is old. I know we are outmatched. But I also know that every one of you chose to serve on a reserve vessel. You chose to maintain these ancient warships. You chose to believe that old does not mean useless. Today we prove it. Today we matter. He closed his eyes. It has been my privilege to serve with you. Helmsman, do not deviate. Hold the course. The ancient carrier accelerated. Its fusion engines, designed before the invention of slipspace travel, burned at maximum output. The Queenship's weapons fired. Energy beams cut through the Pride's hull. Explosions ripped through the ship. But the carrier kept coming, 60 seconds to impact. The Queenship's adaptive shields activated. They were designed to absorb energy weapons, deflect plasma, and disperse quantum attacks. They were the most advanced defensive system in the galaxy. They were not designed to stop a 2-kilometer-long starship moving at 12% of light speed. The Incheon's pride hit the Queen ship's shields and kept going. The shields flared, overloaded, and collapsed. The ancient carrier smashed into the biomechanical armor. Metal and organic matter exploded outward. The Pride broke apart, but its momentum carried the wreckage deep into the Queen ship's hull. A massive breach appeared in the Queen ship's defenses. "Now," Admiral Yuna shouted, "all ships target the breach point. Everything we have." 3,000 remaining human vessels opened fire. Missiles from 5 different eras. Railguns from a dozen different designs. Plasma weapons, lasers, kinetic slugs. Fusion torpedoes. Every weapon humanity had ever invented fired simultaneously at one point. The Queen ship tried to adapt. Its armor thickened around the breach. Its shields attempted to regenerate. But it could not adapt to everything at once. Chemical explosives detonated where its armor was weak. Railgun slugs punched through where it had prepared for energy weapons. Torpedoes exploded where it expected kinetic attacks. Dr. Sang-woo watched from Earth, analyzing the battle data in real time. "It is working," he whispered. "The Queen ship's adaptation protocols are overloading. Each weapon type requires a different response. It is trying to counter all of them simultaneously, and it cannot." More human ships drove forward. An ancient missile cruiser from 2503 fired its entire payload and then rammed the breach. A railgun destroyer from 2547 followed. One by one, the oldest human ships made their final charge. Not because they were ordered to, because they chose to. Each impact widened the breach. Each sacrifice created an opening. The younger ships followed, their weapons tearing deeper into the Queen ship's interior. Captain Hyojin led her destroyer squadron straight into the heart of the beast. Her ships fired their railguns at point-blank range, the metal slugs punching through organic corridors and biomechanical systems. "Keep firing!" she shouted. "Do not stop until we are out of ammunition or out of ship." Commander Jaehee's torpedo frigates danced around the Queen ship, launching their fusion warheads into the breach. Each explosion carved deeper. The Queen ship's adaptive armor tried to seal the wounds, but there were too many different types of damage. Chemical burns, kinetic impacts, fusion radiation, plasma scoring. Each one required a different cellular response, and the biomechanical systems could not keep up. Lieutenant Bora monitored the battle from Earth, tears streaming down her face. "They are dying," she said. "So many ships, so many people. They are winning," Commander Taeyang replied. His voice was tight with emotion. "Every ship we lose is teaching the Queen ship a lesson it cannot forget. You cannot adapt to everything. You cannot prepare for every possibility. Diversity defeats adaptation." Captain Hansol watched his tactical display. The Queen ship was dying, but slowly, too slowly. His own ship was still functional. He had weapons remaining. He had a crew that believed in the mission. He looked at his first officer. "Plot a ramming course," he said quietly. His first officer did not argue. "Course plotted. We can hit near the primary breach. Our mass should destabilize their central core. All ships, this is Hansol. We are going in. It has been an honor to serve alongside you. Remember what we proved today. Old weapons are not useless weapons. Old tactics are not failed tactics. Old ships are not dead ships. They are experienced ships. And experience matters." His vessel accelerated. The Queen ship's weapons were mostly focused on the breach, trying to drive away the swarm of human vessels tearing through its hull. Hansol's ship came in from a different angle. The Queen ship's point defenses fired, but they were optimized for modern fast attack craft. Hansol's ship was older, slower, but heavily armored. It absorbed the hits and kept coming. At the last moment, Hansol activated his ship's self-destruct. The fusion reactors began overload sequences. His ship hit the Queen ship and penetrated deep into its structure before exploding. The Queen ship convulsed. Its adaptive systems, already overwhelmed, could not compensate. The internal explosion triggered a cascade reaction. Biomechanical systems failed. Organic components died. The massive vessel began breaking apart. Admiral Yuna watched from Earth as the Queen ship destroyed itself from within. Around it, the remaining swarm vessels lost coordination. Without the Queen's controlling intelligence, they became confused, disorganized. The coalition forces, seeing the opening, pressed their attack. The swarm fleet began to scatter. "Cease fire," Una ordered. "Let them run." We won. The battle was over. 5,000 human ships destroyed. 60% of the fleet gone. But the swarm was broken. The queen ship was dead. The galaxy was saved. 2 weeks later, Ambassador Jiwoo stood in the Galactic Council chamber. The room was packed. Every species wanted to hear the explanation. Councillor Vexistar spoke first. "Ambassador Jiwoo, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I offer humanity our deepest gratitude. Your fleet saved us all. But I must ask the question that everyone is thinking. Why did you keep those ships? Why maintain vessels that were centuries old?" Jiwoo smiled. "Because we learned from our mistakes. Humanity spent thousands of years fighting itself. We had wars that nearly destroyed our species. We developed weapons that could end all life on our planet, and we made a terrible mistake. We kept discarding the old to pursue the new. We threw away tactics because they were outdated. We scrapped weapons because newer ones were available. And every time we did that, we lost knowledge." She pulled up a holographic display. It showed Earth's history. Wars fought with stones. Wars fought with steel. Wars fought with gunpowder. Wars fought with nuclear weapons. Wars fought in space. After the resource wars nearly destroyed us, we made a decision. We would never again throw away military knowledge. Every weapon we developed would be preserved. Every tactic would be remembered. Every ship would be maintained. Not because we wanted to fight, because we wanted to be ready for any fight. Dr. Sang-woo stepped forward. "I am a military historian. I studied the Void Swarm's behavior for years before they attacked. They are the perfect adaptive enemy. They learn from every engagement. They evolved to counter every threat. But they had a weakness. They expected their enemies to be consistent, modern, predictable." He activated his own display, showing the battle data. The swarm prepared to face the best technology in the galaxy. Instead, they faced every technology humanity ever developed. Chemical weapons they thought were extinct. Kinetic weapons they considered primitive. Tactics they believed were obsolete. They could not adapt because there was nothing consistent to adapt to. Observer Kalthos spoke up. "I have analyzed the battle extensively. What humanity accomplished was theoretically impossible. You defeated a superior enemy with inferior technology. How?" "Not inferior," Commander Tae-yang said. He had been invited to the council as a technical expert. "Comprehensive. Each era of our weapons had strengths. The ancient missiles could not be stopped by energy shields. The old railguns could not be adapted against because they used simple physics. The fusion torpedoes from 3 decades ago used different fusion principles than modern quantum weapons. Every weapon filled a role. Together they were unstoppable.